Being nice is destroying you. Those who try to please everyone inevitably betray themselves. You feel it. Even when you smile, something tightens inside. Even when you're accepted, something within you contracts, because there's a kind of pain that doesn't come from confrontation, but from the absence of it. A kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from fighting, but from the forced silence required to keep others at peace. And that peace comes at a cost. It costs your voice. It costs your will. It costs you. The need to please isn't kindness. It's anxiety. It's ancestral. It was born the moment you learned you'd only have value if you were perfect, available, smiling. When your body understood that love came as a response, not as a presence. When affection depended on not being a burden, on not confronting, on not feeling anger, and the nice one emerged as an emotional shield, as armor made of concessions. But what happens when you spend your whole life trying not to disappoint, and in the process you disappoint yourself? When you say yes to the world, but no to yourself, when kindness becomes a mask, and that mask, no matter how praised, starts to suffocate. Seneca warned, while we worry about pleasing others, we forget to live as we should, and time won't wait for your authenticity to wake up. Being good is not erasing yourself. Being good is not silencing yourself. Being good is not serving at the expense of your emotional health. True kindness comes from alignment, not obligation. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not over the desires of others." And maybe that's where liberation begins, remembering that pleasing everyone is not a virtue. It's a silent pact with your own invalidation. This video is for those who feel exhausted from being too nice, for those who feel their light only shines when it doesn't bother anyone. Today, we'll break that cycle. We'll deconstruct the archetype of the spiritual nice guy and reveal 7 stoic attitudes that restore inner power without guilt, without harshness, only truth. If this content has already touched something inside you, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. And if anxiety has been part of your path, the first link in the description is an invitation to care. The ebook, Anxiety Under Control, was created for those who are tired of losing themselves while trying to keep everyone else close. Because you also deserve to be whole. You also deserve to come home. Topic 1. The vibrational trauma hidden behind the need to please. The compulsion to please isn't kindness, it's a wound. An old wound, often invisible, that learned to disguise itself as gentleness. Those who lived trying to please everyone were almost never truly seen. This need to be accepted at any cost is the echo of early rejections, sometimes so subtle, so silent, they weren't even perceived as trauma. The nice one isn't naturally that way. They were shaped that way. They are the adult who at some point in childhood realized that pleasing was safer than existing, that being useful was better than being spontaneous, that smiling even when they didn't want to avoided conflict, avoided abandonment. The mind recorded that as strategy, and the body as pattern. Neuroscience has already confirmed submissive behavior and confrontation phobia aren't just emotional, they're chemical. The mind associates confrontation with threat, and the body responds with anxiety. The nervous system goes into alert. Cortisol rises, and silence, as harmful as it may be, feels more comfortable than the risk of being rejected for disagreeing. There's a practice that can begin to break this cycle. Stoic meditation with the silent question. If no one applauded, what would I still do? This question doesn't demand an immediate answer. It simply invites you to recognize where love ends and where the addiction to approval begins. Imagine a bird. It sings every day, but suddenly it starts singing only when there's an audience. And slowly, it forgets the sound of its own voice, forgets why it sang, forgets who it was before the applause. That's what happens when you live to please. You drift away from yourself without realizing it. This journey is just beginning, because healing isn't about becoming hardened, it's about becoming whole. And to be whole is to reclaim your voice, even if it doesn't please everyone, even if it only pleases you. Because you also deserve to listen to yourself. You also deserve to remember who you are. Topic 2. Beware of the kind of spirituality that teaches you to be silent instead of to confront. Not every silence is peace. Some silences hurt more than screams. Some calms don't heal. They only numb. And there's a kind of spirituality that teaches you to suffocate your truth in the name of so-called light. But silencing what needs to be said is not elevation. It's self-abandonment. It's fear disguised as virtue. When vibrating peace becomes an excuse to avoid necessary conflicts, the soul begins to fragment. Because what is left unsaid doesn't disappear. It stays there, hidden, accumulating in the muscles, in the breath, in the thoughts that loop endlessly. And the body, which is both temple and mirror, starts to scream what the mouth refused to release. Seneca, with his sharp wisdom, wrote, "It is not a virtue to silently accept what must be corrected." And that phrase holds a powerful key. Accepting everything in the name of serenity isn't stoic wisdom. It's emotional surrender. It's a pact with passivity that blocks transformation. There's a vibrational practice that can restore this inner axis. Respectful confrontation with a mirror, with a journal, with a gesture of truth in front of yourself. It's not about external confrontation, but rather a firm, compassionate gaze that recognizes, here, I've silenced myself too much. And in that recognition, healing begins. Imagine a volcano. It remains silent for years. No one hears it. But inside, the heat builds until it explodes and destroys. Because imposed silence, when it ignores the emotion that wants to emerge, becomes destructive. First internally, then inevitably externally. Perhaps right now, you're feeling the weight of everything you didn't say, just to keep the peace. But true peace doesn't come from suppression. It comes from the courage to stand your ground with love, to show up with truth, to exist fully, without masks, without fear of disturbing others. Because your voice is also part of healing. Your truth is also light. Topic 3. Invisible mistake, confusing compassion with self-abandonment. There's a fine line between serving out of love and abandoning yourself out of fear. Sometimes, the person who helps the most is the one bleeding the most inside. They offer the best of themselves, even when they have almost nothing left. They smile, care, nurture, but they slowly start to empty themselves without noticing, because they've confused compassion with the absence of boundaries, and being good with not existing. When this pattern repeats, it's not just emotional, it reshapes the body. Excessive giving activates chronic stress. Cortisol rises, the immune system weakens, and identity begins to dissolve. The person no longer knows where the other ends and where they begin. They feel too much, take on too much, give up too much, but live less and less. Epigenetics confirms repeated emotional behaviors shape genetic expression. This means that when you abandon yourself daily in the name of others, your body starts to register that abandonment as normal, and it responds with symptoms: anxiety, insomnia, unexplained fatigue, disconnection. There's a ritual that can begin the return to yourself. Silent emotional boundaries. It's not shouting, it's not imposition, it's vibration. It's a no said with internal firmness. A gaze that respects the other, but above all respects itself. Because compassion without limits is self-sabotage, and empathy that hurts you is not virtue, it's addiction. Imagine a cup. If it overflows, it's not full. It's been neglected. It wasn't cared for. It was forgotten. An overflowing cup is not useful. It spills, makes a mess, loses itself. That's what happens to a heart that gives too much without being nourished. If somewhere in your body you already feel the weight of giving too much, maybe this is the moment to return, not to stop loving, but to include yourself in the love you offer. Because serving the world doesn't require you to disappear. Your whole presence is your greatest contribution. Your preserved essence is true kindness. Topic 4. Why most people fail when trying to please everyone and get sick because of it. Behind the constant effort to please lies an invisible conflict, a misalignment between what one feels and what one shows. The person wants to be accepted, recognized, loved. But to achieve that, they censor entire parts of themselves, and that censorship, when repeated, leads to illness. The soul quiets down too much. The body starts to scream. Identity dissolves in silent exchanges where everything is given, and yet something is still missing. This state is known as vibrational dissonance, an internal battle between the desire to be true and the fear of not being accepted. The mind rationalizes, the body feels, and symptoms appear: anxiety, muscle tension, insomnia, stress hormones circulating daily as if you had to fight for space inside your own life. Pleasing out of fear is not a choice. It's a reaction, a sophisticated form of survival. And the more you live in this dynamic, the more you lose yourself, because slowly the other becomes the center, and you, a satellite orbiting around others' expectations. There's a practice that brings light to this pattern. Write down the names of 3 people you try to please out of fear, not love. Just recognizing them is a start, because clarity brings power, and what is named can be transformed. Marcus Aurelius said, "You must live according to nature, not expectation. And your nature is not as mutable as a chameleon. Your essence was not made to be adapted to every environment. Your truth needs roots, because those who change too much to fit in forget who they are." Imagine a chameleon. It survives, yes, but in its constant changes, it loses the habit of recognizing itself. And without inner recognition, there's no peace, only a deep fatigue from trying too hard to belong. If you feel like you've been adapting more than truly living, maybe now is the time to stop. Breathe, and remember, you don't have to please everyone to be loved. You just have to stop abandoning yourself, because the most healing acceptance doesn't come from others. It begins when you choose yourself again. Topic 5. The kindness that destroys. When saying yes is a form of vibrational cowardice, not every yes is love. Many yeses are fear. Fear of loss, fear of disappointing, fear of no longer being needed. There is a form of vibrational cowardice disguised as generosity. It's the automatic yes, the one that comes out before the heart has time to check the truth. Saying yes when you want to say no is a kind of abandonment, and that abandonment, when repeated, becomes an energetic pattern. The person begins to live just to maintain affection, begins to trade their freedom for someone's continued presence. But no relationship sustained by fear of rejection can truly nourish. It only drains, it only consumes, it only empties. There's a hidden addiction in this behavior, the addiction to avoiding rejection. It's an energetic attachment disguised as kindness, a constant attempt to guarantee connection through concession, and that, little by little, corrodes self-esteem, because the heart knows, it feels that it's being used against itself, and that breeds guilt, resentment, exhaustion. There's a technique that can shift this subtle cycle. The conscious yes. It's not rushed, it's not automatic, it is breathed. 3 deep breaths before responding. 3 chances to listen to yourself, because saying yes to others without first checking in with your own truth is just a disguised no. It's a contract that breaks you. Seneca wrote, "Those who try to be useful to everyone are useless to themselves." And that uselessness isn't laziness, it's dissolution. It's the loss of your center in the name of being agreeable. It's the shield you raised to protect others that, without noticing, became your prison. Imagine this: a shield, strong, shiny, light in the beginning. But over time it gets heavy, over time it tightens, and one day you realize you can't lower it anymore. You don't know how to live without it, but you're no longer living with it either. Healing begins when your yes becomes a choice again, when kindness is no longer an obligation. When you learn that to love doesn't mean always saying yes. It means knowing when to say no without feeling less good. Because your strength doesn't lie in pleasing, it lies in being whole, even if not everyone applauds, even if not everyone stays. Topic 6. The spiritual trap of being light while extinguishing your shadow. There's a kind of light that shines so bright, it blinds, And there are people who try so hard to be light that they forget to burn from within. They suppress themselves. Go silent. Repress everything they feel. Anger, sadness, frustration, in the name of supposed enlightenment. But the body doesn't lie. The body stores what the soul cannot digest. And sooner or later, that content comes back. The spiritual nice guy becomes addicted to appearing at peace. But inside, there's a minefield. Repressed emotions that haven't been dissolved, only swept into the unconscious. And neuroscience confirms it. Everything that is emotionally suppressed gets somatized. The body becomes ill from what the mind refuses to hear. There's nothing more exhausting than pretending everything is fine while silently begging for permission to feel. The problem isn't anger. The problem is denying the anger. The problem isn't pain. It's masking the pain with words that are too sweet, with a spirituality that demands perfection at the cost of emotional health. There's a simple yet powerful technique: free writing with anger, a moment where you write without a filter, without guilt, without judgment. Just let it out. Because anger that is welcomed transforms into a healthy boundary, but anger that's ignored becomes passive toxicity, silent yet corrosive. Imagine this, a shadow. You try to run from it. You walk faster, get brighter, aim higher, but it doesn't disappear because it's not outside, it's inside. And everything that's denied in the dark grows. Stoicism doesn't ask you not to feel. It asks you to recognize, to integrate, to transmute. Being light is not about smiling all the time. It's about knowing how to illuminate even the parts that hurt. Because true spirituality doesn't cancel the shadow. It transforms it. And you don't have to erase who you are in order to evolve. You just have to allow your whole truth, light and dark, to finally exist. Topic 7. How to rebuild virtue without sacrificing your essence. After saying yes so many times when you wanted to say no, after giving in, staying silent and reshaping yourself to be accepted, a silent question begins to rise. How do I keep being good without losing myself? How do I hold on to virtue without sacrificing my own truth? The answer isn't in becoming hard, it's in becoming whole. Being good isn't about being pleasant to everyone. Being good is about being coherent, aligned, whole. In Stoicism, virtue is not a social performance, it's inner steadiness. It's the ability to do what must be done, not out of fear, not to be validated, but because it's in harmony with who you are. Rebuilding that virtue requires a redefinition. What does it really mean to be good? For many, it means pleasing others, but for the Stoic, it means being just. Acting with awareness, setting boundaries when needed, not to push others away, but as an expression of respect for yourself and for them. There's a practice that can help sustain this alignment, a simple daily ritual, a moment where you ask yourself before any action, what I'm about to do, does it come from love or from fear? This question doesn't judge, it reveals. And over time, it teaches the body to respond from a cleaner, freer place. Marcus Aurelius said, "What is in line with reason and virtue must be done." This phrase, lived in practice, doesn't ask for perfection. It invites you to live with truth, without needing to please, without needing to hide. Imagine the sun. It rises every day. It shines, it warms. It doesn't ask if it's bothering anyone. It doesn't apologize for being what it is. It fulfills its nature, and in doing so, it sustains life. You can be like that too. Shine without justifying. Love without dimming yourself. Do good without abandoning yourself. Because being light isn't about being perfect. It's about being whole, even if not everyone understands, even if it takes time for you to recognize it yourself. Conclusion: those who don't define their own boundaries will always be someone else's territory. You've made it this far, and maybe something inside you is quietly saying, enough. Enough of saying yes when your heart hesitates. Enough of smiling when your soul is tired. Enough of hiding behind the idea that being good means never disturbing anyone, because it doesn't. Being good is not about dissolving. It's about staying whole. It's having the courage to exist with both firmness and gentleness, with presence and boundaries, with empathy and truth. The nice one everyone likes is often not virtuous. They're conditioned, and what has been conditioned can be redefined. Liberation doesn't require you to harden. It requires you to recognize yourself, to stop asking for permission to be who you are, to let your kindness stop being a demand and become a choice, a vibrational choice, a choice for integrity, a choice made by someone who no longer wants to be accepted at the cost of themselves. Seneca said, "Nothing is more honorable than a mind that is sufficient unto itself." And Epictetus added, "Don't seek to be liked, seek to be true." Truth isn't always easy, but it's what sustains the soul, what heals the body, what realigns the path. May your light no longer need to dim your shadow. May your generosity no longer be mistaken for absence. May your presence never again be negotiated for acceptance. Because the world doesn't need more agreeable people, it needs real people. If this message echoed in your silence, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. And if anxiety still whispers that you must please others to be loved, click the first link in the description. The Anxiety Under Control ebook might be the starting point for a reconciliation with your voice, with your boundaries, with your truth. You weren't made to disappear in the name of peace. You were made to exist in the name of wholeness, and that wholeness begins now.